In this part, we're going to start our drawing of our cupcake in Flash. Now do a Google image search and find the two cupcakes. We want this one and that one. This is the main one that we want. And I've opened each one in a separate window so I can get access to them. But the main one that you want is right here. I'm going to right click on it, choose Copy Image, and I'm going to go to Flash and create a new file. Now in Flash, the default file size is 550 by 400 pixels. That's pretty darn small. So let's make that a little bit bigger. 960 by 540. That's a nice 16 by 9 size. And if I view this thing at a 50% size, you'll see I can see everything on screen. Now that of course means that we are drawing kind of small at this point, or we're only seeing it at 50% size, so just be aware of that. Anyway, I'm going to paste this drawing, and if I do want to scale it down a little bit, because you know, at 50% it's pretty big. If I go up to 100%, there's the size, so that's about the size that I'd like to put it on my stage, because we're going to be drawing, let's see, 5 different objects, so I'm just making it so it's comfortable and not huge. Alright. Now, this is what we're going to be using as a guide for our drawing. Be aware that in Flash it may not look perfectly straight, but that's okay. We just need it as a guide. But we're also going to make this a guide layer. So I right-clicked, and I really want to go down here, and I want to lock that layer. The reason why is because we don't want to interact with that layer anymore. We're going to now create another layer, and this is actually going to be our drawing. And the other one is going to be our guide. Now, another thing that we can do is actually turn this to a guide layer, which we'll do after we've done some drawing. So let's go back to the drawing layer, and we're going to begin to draw our object. What I'd like you to do is remove the fill color by clicking on that and going over to red slash, and then I've changed my stroke color so it's like a bright color that I can really see. Plus I've made the size about 2 pixels so I can really see it. I might even zoom up just a little bit more so I can get real close to my work. Alright, now the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to draw the first oval that kind of simulates the top of this muffin or cupcake. So I'm going to use the Alt key as I drag out with the oval tool and just kind of get that basic shape in there. It doesn't have to be perfect, we just need to get close. As close as we possibly can, of course. So that's good. It's going to look pretty decent. Now the next thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to actually duplicate this same exact object down to the bottom. And the reason I'm doing that is because I'm going to use that for the bottom. And yeah, sure, it could be a little bit different, so maybe I can just use the Alt key and just make it a little bit curvier on the bottom, because as we rotate things, this would be less curved than that would be based upon perspective. Now we also need to imagine where the endpoints are. So I'm going to actually do a selection that says that's going to be the endpoint over there, and on the other side I'm going to make the same endpoint. So there's my endpoint here and there. I know it's hard to see. Let's do that to stroke. There we go. 2 points. That's better. There we go. Now we can really see those. Now I'm going to draw the sides. And I'm going to just draw with a line. And then I'm going to snap each side by holding down the Control key. Or you can go to the black arrow and just snapping that to each side. Now it doesn't have to be perfect, but it should be close enough that of course it looks pretty good. And it kind of works to make a cupcake. Now if you want to bow these sides just the tiniest amount, you can do that. That way it's not perfectly straight. That's kind of nice to do that. Now the next thing that we need to do is to add some of these lines here in the center. I like to, instead of having that in the center right here, I'm actually going to start by drawing one in the center. Now one of the things to be aware of is that when we draw, this line is going to intersect with these other points. So just be aware of that as you are drawing it. Now the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to turn off this thing, because I'm going to kind of guesstimate from the midsection to the midsection. There, mid to mid. And this is actually allowing me to kind of get closer to the actual places I want to get versus me following the guide. So basically I'm dividing the point in half, divide that in half, that in half to that. And it doesn't have to be perfect, but you want it close enough that it doesn't look really, really bad. All right, now you notice we curved that a little bit. We can curve that just a tiny, tiny bit. Doesn't have to be much, but that little tiny bit of curve just makes things just a tiny bit more organic, I think. Just a tiny, tiny bit. All right, now the next thing that we have are these little curves that we wanted that were on the original cupcake. If we take a look at the other cupcake, it has those little curves, and I wanted to show, of course, as soon as you make those intersections with Flash, you have the ability with the black arrow to just modify those shapes just the tiniest bit. Just a little bit will do. Now I do want to point out that this one right here just didn't look that good. So we might need to go to the white arrow and adjust that. You might zoom in a little bit and see what's going on, because there's definitely some funniness to that one. But a little quick adjusting with the white arrow, and we can make that look definitely a little bit nicer. Now, the other thing that we noticed was on the original muffin there, this stuff isn't really super out. It's a little bit more rounded there. So there you go, that's not too bad. We're just modifying that shape a little bit. Now the next thing we need to do is figure out what to do with the stuff here on the top. Now I'm going to draw that kind of separately. So one of the things that I like to do is lock things from each other by making a group out of it. So if I select all the stuff that I've drawn so far and group it, that means that the next drawing that I make will not be a part of that group and it won't interfere with it. And that's really good because maybe you want to take off or you want to be able to move the icing or whatever this is from the cupcake. You want to adjust that. So you want it to be separate. Alright, so I'm going to zoom in a little bit and let's start to draw something again. Now I'm going to do this one a little bit more rough just by drawing basically a simple oval like this and then starting to modify it. I hold down the control key and I can start to move this shape around and do different things with it. Now on the outside edge, it'd be nice for us to have these different corners here, and there's a couple different ways we can do it. If we hold down the Alt key along with that black arrow, we actually can make a new kind of point. That's a really nice effect. Alt key held down. I tend to use the control key a lot because it does the same thing when you're on other tools. Alright, so there's a good start to that. But the last thing that we kind of need for this is some lines, just like they have in the original. So I'm going to go back to the line tool and just draw those lines and then snap it there and curve it. Draw it to the side, adjust where I want the beginning to be, and then adjust the curve. So it's pretty easy to do those curves using this technique. And of course I can adjust how much I want that curve to be. Now with this object, let's go ahead and select it by double-clicking it and group it as well. That means now I could overlap the two of these without much problem. Now obviously there's some stuff missing here. If we want to go in, we have to adjust it. I had to use the double click to go inside the object to change it. And we might need to come in here and use something like the white arrow to adjust this particular shape inside. Let's see if we can get that to adjust a little bit more. There. Now it looks a little bit more organic, a little bit more like the original. Go back to the black arrow double click out on the outside, you can now see I could kind of move that down and have the ability to overlap these shapes. Now what we need to do is fill them. Oh, we do have, of course, the cherry. I totally forgot about that. Start off with something like a simple circle, and then just start to modify the shape some. Cherry can be, somewhat different shape. It doesn't have to be a perfect circle. That can be a nice little cherry like that. And then, of course, maybe we need a stem for this. So I'll use the line tool, just draw a quick stem. In fact, I can use multiple lines and draw a stem just like that. Now, we probably want different things to be grouped, so I'm going to group that and the cherry separately, because that way I can put that on top of the cherry, and you can see it can be moved separately. And then that's a group, this is a group, then I can select both of those and group them so that I can then manipulate them separately or together. And so now we need to go in and start to fill color. So I'm going to start off with the cherry just because it's here. We need to go inside the objects we want to fill, and we've got a couple different options. We can go to the fill tool right here. Actually, this really is the best option. Use the fill tool, paint bucket tool, and choose the color you want. So I'm going to go with kind of a red in here and put that on the inside of the cherry. Go back to my group, go to the stem, find kind of a brown color. Right now I'm not too concerned with the colors being absolutely perfect. It looks like I don't have the stem on top, which I should have thought about. So we can adjust these things if we do arrange, send to the front, or you can use the control up and down arrow. That allows it to come up to the front. And let's look at some of these other objects here. We want to go inside of it and then find the kind of color that we want for our icing, and let's say that we want to use something kind of bright, cheerful, like a yellow or something. So we'll use that kind of yellow. Ooh, it's pretty bright stuff, but it's kind of fun. Maybe a little bit lighter, a little bit more natural looking. Then we come back, let's take a look at the other objects that we want. We've got our muffin and the tin. So let's say that we're going to have a kind of like one of those metal covering ones, or what are some of the other colors that we might find? They're probably not going to be too terribly colorful. So it means that we're going to want to stay in these somewhat desaturated colors. Let's just try that for right now. Kind of a random but simple color. And then let's see, we need a muffin. So that muffin's going to be kind of like a chocolate color. Got to figure out what's a good chocolate color. Where do I get that color? Where is chocolate? That's kind of dark. Well, I tell you, there, that's a little bit better. That's the color I want. All right, if I double click on the outside of that, you can see we're starting to get something to kind of come together here. And if I go ahead and turn off the guide, you'll see here's the end result of what we've created so far. Looks pretty good. So we're going to actually just go on from here because we need to apply the cell shading. So go ahead and save your work if you've gone this far. I'm going to go ahead and save this. So File, Save As, and you're going to call it Cupcake, I guess. I'll put it in my temp folder here. Or maybe you can call it 5 objects, but I'll just call it Cupcake. Alright, and let's go on to the next tutorial.